Hi you guys, it's me Arden Lee. I am back with another video, and this video is by special request of one of the graduates of the repatterning project who has asked for a primer for partners of fawn types. And then she corrected herself. She said correction, partners of recovering fawn types. So for those of you who are not familiar with what fawning is, the fawn trauma response, we have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn is number 4. And we've also added a 5th one, which is faint, which is people just black out entirely. So you guys are probably familiar with fight and flight, both as a trauma response. Freeze, I'll just go over super quickly. It just means that you freeze and you don't know what to do, and you kind of dissociate, even though your body kind of stays still on Earth and your mind kind of goes elsewhere. And fawn is essentially when we decide that since we're in a situation that we can't leave, we don't feel safe leaving, or we feel we can't leave, and we want to navigate this situation with as little harm as possible coming to ourselves, what we learn is the fawn response. Essentially, we do things to become pleasing to the person that we're afraid is in control or going to hurt us, or maybe even someone who isn't going to hurt us, but who has the power to protect us from other people who hurt us. Basically what we do is, that's an interesting twist on the fawn response that I actually hadn't fully articulated before, because oftentimes I wouldn't always fawn. I wouldn't always try to be pleasing around my abusers, but I would absolutely be pleasing to people that I thought could maybe protect me from abuse. And by focusing just on being pleasing all the time, I actually ended up attracting people who took advantage of me, ended up abusing me anyway. So, but that's an interesting thing to think about. Yeah, so essentially we have a pattern, we recovering fawn types have a pattern where when we perceive danger, we ally ourselves, we align ourselves with whether that person is the person who is dangerous, or whether it's someone that we perceive might be able to protect us from danger. And we try to be as valuable to them as possible, because essentially we're trying to avoid harm and we're trying to source protection. So we end up with this pattern where the minute we feel unsafe, the minute we feel like there's danger, we could just feel, the slightest amount of trigger, but if this pattern is ingrained enough, we just go into this response of trying to be pleasing, of all of a sudden, our needs feel really super dangerous, and the needs of everyone else around us feel super, super important, because if we're taking care of those people's needs, then they'll take care of us in return. In theory, this is how we kind of, how we rationalize it in our minds. Spoiler alert, doesn't work all that well. It actually causes a lot more trouble than it prevents. But I've made some videos about the fawn response. I've given some talks and written some posts about it, and it is part of the curriculum of the 8-week course, the Repatterning Project, which is coming up June 30th. We start, so there's still time to get in if you want to be in our container this summer. If you want to join us and commit this 8 weeks this summer. To really figuring all this out for yourself, so that when fall comes around, you're in a totally different place and things just keep getting exponentially better and better, as our graduates keep describing. I'm so excited getting all the amazing testimonials in. If that sounds like something you want to do, reach out to me and we'll hop on a call and see if it's a good fit for you for where you're at in your journey right now. So we do go over a lot of that in the Repatterning Project, but in today's video, like I said, this is a special request for advice for people who are partnering with people who have ingrained fawn responses that hopefully they are actively working on, since it's not any one partner's responsibility to adapt to the other one to make the whole relationship work naturally. In fact, that's kind of the problem that most fawns have to begin with, that we want to undo. But what are some helpful things that partners of recovering fawn types can know about fawn types? The first thing I think that you should, and you guys, this is coming from my personal experience, so if anyone else has any suggestions that they think, please feel free to engage with me in the comments. Let me know what you think about this, because this isn't anything that I've seen posted in quite this way anywhere else. There's been a lot of dialogue about understanding the fawn response, but in terms of advice for partners of fawn types, I haven't really seen that around yet. So I'm mostly pulling from my own experience and from all the research that I've culled together and what comes up for me naturally, what feels right, what feels intuitive based on all the research that I've done. But again, if there's anything that I could add, feel free to let me know in the comments. This is kind of an exciting topic to talk about since this is a really emergent discussion in our collective. So, all right. So with all that said, here are the things that I would advise for people who are engaged in relationship with recovering fawn types. The first thing to know is that it can feel really dangerous or embarrassing for us to focus on our needs. And we may have ingrained this pattern so deeply that it's really hard for us to actually tell what we want. Obviously, that can cause some trouble in a relationship. Thankfully, since we don't know what we want either, we don't expect you to read our minds, most times, naturally. But we can get into these harmful cycles where we're really just not thinking about what we want, where we're really, settling for crumbs. So the first thing that I would say is if you have a partner who has trouble figuring out what they want and always, says, oh, I don't know what I want for dinner, you decide. There's kind of a weird paradox here, because on the one hand, you want to encourage them to speak up about what they want, and speaking up about what they want means really thinking about what they want. And on the other hand, sometimes I believe that fawns need to sort of be taken at their word, because in some ways they sometimes need to see that being held to exactly what they've stated that they want, or what they've stated they're okay with. And then if they get the results and they don't like it, then that is actually also helpful for them in confronting, well, what did they want? Because if this is what they said and they're still not happy, then they need to do a little bit of soul searching. So kind of hold that paradox in mind. On the one hand, yes, you want to have dialogue with them and say, like, well, is this what you really want? Or is it just, is it just hard to make that decision? And on the other hand, being able to take them at their word and say, well, okay, then this is what we're going to do. And then if that ends up being either unfulfilling to them or they have some sort of a problem with it later, then you can have that dialogue and say, well, I did ask you about this and this is what you said, so I can only go on what you tell me. You're not expected to be a mind reader of fawn types. We really can have trouble speaking up about our needs sometimes, but we need to be held to the accountability of communicating. And sometimes there's this lovely middle ground too that can actually work out really well, which is sometimes like that's where I can be at sometimes. Sometimes it's like I might not know exactly what I want, but I can focus on like one aspect of what I want. And as long as that need is fulfilled, I don't really care about anything else. So for example, I might have a partner say like, hey, where do you want to go for dinner tonight? And I might not know what kind of food I'm in the mood for whatsoever, because I have a hard time getting in touch with my body and discerning what kind of actual food cravings I'm having. But I might be able to say, you know what, I don't know. I don't have a preference for the kind of cuisine that we have tonight. But I do want to go somewhere where I can wear this nice dress. And I've done that with partners before, and they've been like, great, then I'll pick whether we're going to, a steakhouse or a seafood joint or, tacos or whatever, but I'm going to make sure it's somewhere where this nice dress you want to wear can fit in. So that can be kind of a nice middle ground sometimes, and that actually allows fawn types like myself to actually practice this sort of balance of like, well, I have this need, and it leaves so much room for my partner to get their needs met. I'm going to let them pick whatever kind of food they want to eat tonight because I genuinely don't know. But I have this one need, which is I want to wear a nice dress. So as long as my one need is met, then great, right? Starting to think of like keywords for associating, when you're a fawn type is really great. Hey, I don't know what I want to eat tonight, but I do know that I'm trying to stay healthy. So as long as something is healthy by XYZ standards, I'm going to be good with it, whatever that is. So that's one thing right there. Another thing I'm going to advise is that there are a lot of us recovering fawns who this is kind of vulnerable for me to share. And I'm not sure if this advice would like, I don't know if there's anyone out there who would be like clinically prescribing this advice necessarily, but there are a lot of us fawn types out there who have actually spent a lot of time and investment in becoming pleasing. And we may actually get a lot of genuine joy from that. And while it's really important that we learn to rein it in and learn not to let our desire to be pleasing override the realities of a relationship that is toxic or falling apart, or thinking that if only we could be better, if only we were more pleasing, this wouldn't be happening. You know, we obviously want to overcome that. But if you have a relationship with a fawn that is otherwise healthy and productive and communicative, and if a fawn is in relationship with someone who is not taking advantage of them, please don't shame us for being pleasing. Please don't act like we're broken. Please understand that in many ways we're just adapting our pattern to something that is healthier. And if things like being considerate of our partner's preferences, you know, and taking the time to get to know someone and think about what they might like or what they might enjoy, like, that's something that we actually need more of in relationships. So of course you want to make sure that it's not going so far that you have a fawn who's like beating themselves up if they get it wrong, or thinking that the whole relationship hinges on their making this perfect performance. You know, yeah, of course we want to rein it back in from being toxic in that manner. But if it's healthy, if you're just dating someone who is more thoughtful and more considerate of you and your needs than you're accustomed to, I would kindly advise you to get the fuck over yourself and accept that gracefully, and see if you can learn from your recovering fawn maybe a lesson or two about consideration and thoughtfulness. Because, you know, the number 2 predictor of relationship success, according to a Time magazine study, second only to that fundamental colossus, communication, was knowledge of one's partner. And that went for everything from knowing their hopes and their goals and their dreams and their deep spiritual philosophical yearnings to what their favorite toppings on a pizza are, you know? So one thing that's really great about recovering fawns is that they are naturally wired to be thoughtful and considerate. So if you are noticing this in your fawn type, don't assume that every expression of this impulse is unhealthy. Instead, what I can say that I want as a recovering fawn is someone who actually notices and doesn't take for granted what I do, and someone who you know, is appreciative and receives gracefully and expresses, probably like for me, my love languages are like verbal affirmation and physical touch. So for me, it would probably be expresses appreciation with you know, words of thanks and like a nice hug or a kiss on the forehead. Like, wow, thank you so much for thinking of me. I so appreciate you. Like, you're always so kind and thoughtful, and this gift that you happened to pick up for me today while you were out at the farmer's market is like, wow, that's so lovely. It's so nice to be thought of. Thank you for being such a considerate partner. So don't try to fix your fawns just because you know that they're a fawn, right? Not every expression of consideration or thoughtfulness is unhealthy. And if what we really want is just that amount of appreciation, and that's what we're aiming for, just fucking give it to us, man. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And let us know that we don't have to do these things in order for the relationship to be safe. You know, it's nice to say like, hey, you know, I would love you regardless, even if all you did all day was just like sit around in sweatpants. You know, if you're sick for 2 to 3 months and you can't do anything, I would still stand by you. I would still be in love with you, because I'm in love with you because of who you are and not what you do for me. But you know what? Thank you for being so thoughtful, and it just warms my heart, or whatever. You know, you can assure your fawn types that that the relationship is not contingent on their performance, but you can still do that without trying to get them to stop performing if if that performance is enough of an ingrained pattern at this point that they're trying to actually make it work for them and make it work in a healthy way rather than, because the opposite of fawning is just complete lack of consideration. So you don't want to squash all of it in its expression. You just want to make sure that it's being expressed fully and healthfully. And also, even though you're not supposed to be a mind reader, just kind of know that when someone does something like that for you, when a fawn type, goes and like buys you a nice gift or whatever, that's probably a sign that they're just looking for a little bit of extra affection, and that's sort of their bid for going about it, right? So maybe beneath that gift, what they're really saying is like, can I have a hug? Or, and again, it's not your job to be a mind reader, but understand that fawning can sometimes be a bid for connection. And if you just try to shut that down entirely, that's actually really going to hurt them. So again, it's that paradox. It's that don't feel any obligation to read what they want beyond their words, but understand that they're probably bidding for something, and you can ask them about that too. Like, hey, how are you doing? Thank you so much for being so thoughtful of me. Is there something that you're wanting? Is there something, should we like take a night and take a night in to watch a movie together and cuddle on the couch? Are you, whatever your fawn's love language is, learning your fawn's love language is super, super important, because if you can learn their sort of like blanket, like, the blanket things that they want and crave in relationship, again, if you guys are, hopefully you're familiar with the 5 love languages concept by Gary Chapman. If not, you can look it up. It's all over the internet. But the 5 love languages are verbal affirmation, acts of service, physical touch, gifts, and quality time. So if you know your fawn's love language and you see your fawn making a bid by doing something pleasing for you, reward them in their love language, because they're probably just making a bid for connection that they might not, quite feel comfortable fully expressing, asking for, or articulating quite yet. At the same time, also hold them to, how do I want to say this? If you have a fawn type who is still in the toxic, unhealthy cycle of being pleasing in order to make a bid for something that they're not comfortable asking for, if it's general affection or appreciation, I think that's different. But if they're like, let me see if I can just think up a concrete example. If they're like, hey, do you want to go to the fair on Saturday? And you're like, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm not sure what I'm doing Saturday. I'll I don't know if we'll see, And instead of them saying, hey, the truth is I really want to go to the fair on Saturday and I'm really hoping that you'll go with me. Is that something that you would consider if it was important to me? And if they're not willing to say that or not comfortable saying that, and instead they just make you dinner the next 3 nights in a row, hoping secretly that you'll read their mind, then no, you're going to want to hold them to actually saying like, hey, look, it's safe for you to communicate your needs. It's safe for you to express your needs. If you were trying to do something as a plea bargain, if you were trying to make me dinner for 3 nights in a row because you were secretly hoping that if I enjoyed your dinner that I would take you to the fair on Saturday, well, you've just started a transaction that I'm not in on, right? You've just started this transactional bargain, hoping that I'm going to read your mind and know that because you're making me dinner 3 nights in a row that I'm supposed to magically read into the fact that you really want to go to the fair and it's important to you, even though all you said to me about it was, hey, do you want to maybe go to the fair on Saturday? Hey, I thought that was a neutral question and I didn't know it was important to you. So no, I'm not going to allow myself to be manipulated by the fact that you made me dinner 3 nights in a row. And now you expect me to do this thing that you didn't actually articulate and get my word on. So do you see how it's kind of like, it's this paradox, right? At every step, you want to notice and understand their inner workings, and yet not be plea bargained or fawned or manipulated into an expectation that their fawning is going to pay off in ways that you haven't signed up for. That their fawning is going to be, part of a transaction where you show up in a very specific way. So while you do want to give appreciation for their thoughtfulness and consideration, and you do want to honor the fact that you do have a partner who fucking pays attention to you in this world where we're so often consumed by people who are selfish or just not paying attention enough, like not observant, who just like kind of coast through their lives and their relationships without really paying attention to the people around them and connecting deeply with them. You want to honor all that positivity in them, and you want to make sure that they're not using it in a way of manipulating you. And they're probably not trying to be manipulative. They're probably not trying to they're probably coming at you in good faith. It's just that when they were little, if they spoke up about their needs, they were made fun of, they were, endangered, they were whatever. So they learned to do this thing instead. And you just need to create this space for them that says, like, listen, if you want to be nice and thoughtful to me, if that makes you feel good, and and that makes you feel like you like the appreciation that I give back to you when you do nice things for me, hey, that's great. I love that, and I'm going to try and take a page out of your book and learn how to be thoughtful and considerate in the way that you are too. But if you expect that the things that you're doing for me are going to get a specific reaction from me that I haven't agreed to, then no, then I'm sorry. You're going to need to actually use your words and your language, and remember that it's safe here. I'm not your dad. I'm not your mom. I'm me. You're you. We're adults. Everything is fine. And I need you to start speaking up about your actual needs and expectations, so that I can have a conversation about them with you like an adult, and I can see if I can meet them as much as possible. So do appreciate your fawns. Do not allow your fawns to manipulate you into things that you haven't signed up for just because they're trying to be super pleasing to you all the time. I know that in my worst fawn relationships, man, I just gave and gave and gave, and I was so depleted. And I thought it was obvious, like if you have a golden goose who is laying you golden eggs every month, why would you choke it to death, right? Why would you endanger it? And I thought that was a super obvious equation, and it wasn't. I'm assuming that if you're watching this video or your partner is giving you this video, that you're not someone who is going to be drawn into that kind of a relationship where you're, where one person is constantly using and usurping all of the resources and energy of the other person. I'm assuming that you are at a place in your relationship where you are healthy enough that you can actually have conversations around this topic, and you can navigate going forward what's going to be more and more healthy for you. So I've come out of some pretty extreme fawn relationships, but yeah. Wow, I just slightly dissociated and I forgot what I was saying. But I think I put all the points in this video that I wanted to say. Ultimately, yeah, it is about that balance between understanding and appreciating your fawn and where their triggers come from, and also not allowing them to go so far into their fawn response that they're putting unhealthy, unrealistic expectations on you, that they're draining themselves, and holding them accountable for improving their ability to actually communicate their needs in a way that you can hear and understand and respond to. So thank you guys. This is a super fun video to do. Yeah, wow. I love the way that this conversation is emerging in the collective, and that we're addressing it with more and more specificity. It really, really makes my heart happy that a lot of people are going to avoid the situations that I was unable to avoid many years ago. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Again, if you're interested in the repatterning project, hit me up and we will have a conversation about where you're at and what your goals are, and if it is the right container for you. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.